Countdown. So if we get everyone in, make it as loud as possible, okay? 10 to 1. Ready? Ready, Alia? Go. Countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7. Okay? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, go.
9, 8, 7, 6,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So the future is calling you, the younger generation is calling you. Why don't you take your seats? Can I request Chintana to start with the profiles of the panelists and the moderator? Thank you.
To receive the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health Leadership Award, Dr. Kezevino Aram serves as president of Shanti Ashram, a development organization she joined over 20 years ago and has been leading since 2014. A child health practitioner with a passion for public health and over 2 decades of experience, Dr. Aram's focus on child health led to the scaling up of the service footprint from 5,000 vulnerable children then to nearly 70,000 today across over 100 villages. Among her many awards are the Albert Schweitzer Award for Commitment to Public Health Practice, Harvard University, Dr. Fan Chin Memorial Award for Innovation, Harvard University, Dharma Chakra Award for Contribution to Child Health, and the Outstanding Young
Kindly take your
Award.
seats, please. Thank you.
Widely travelled, Dr. Aram speaks 8 languages, and music, reading, and travel are how she chooses to relax. Partner, Climate Collective, and lead Impact in Women in Climate Entrepreneurship. She manages and facilitates many acceleration programs of the Climate Collective and is also the country lead for the Climate KIC program, Climate Launchpad, Sri Lanka, Maldives, and UAE programs. Karthik Chandrasekar started Sangam Ventures to find a new model to provide early stage support for climate change pioneers. The Seed and Early Stage Venture Fund invests to improve access to sustainable energy and resource productivity solutions for the underserved in India. Sangam hopes that its efforts lead to inclusive development and creation of communities that are resilient to climate change. Karthik Chandrasekar spends a lot of his time within the clean technology ecosystem in India and globally.
Please put your hands together for Ms. Vinu Aram from our very own Coimbatore, Ms. Jui Joshi and Karthik Chandrasekar from Goa. The panel will be discussing on fostering greenpreneurship sustainably.
Friends, it's always a tough call when you have 2 powerful presentations from Fahad, from you, and from Mr. Muruganandam to hear what this world is really made of. I think we heard between the inauguration and now that it requires all of us to make the world what it is. Without any of us, it's still not possible to make all that we do in a single day. Let me start off just with a minute of kind of recontextualizing, and then you will have the wonderful experiences from Jui and Karthik to you. You know, we're still in the midst of a pandemic. Let's not forget it. The COVID-19 pandemic is still dynamic. If you pull up the dashboards, you will see 200 plus countries where this virus has very actively traveled. 500 million people have tested positive. That 500 million mark was when I was at Davos at the World Economic Forum this year. There too, Ranjana, they met after 2 years, and we meet here in person. And this is not plain stats, because this is public health. We have seen for all of us, I think we have seen in a big picture that if certain issues are not paid attention to in time, the world can come to a standstill. And this virus, invisible to the naked eye, had the power to do that. It did bring us to a standstill. It did not matter whether you were a Fortune 500 company CEO or you were from Naikanpalayam in a little part of Coimbatore. Friends, we also must look at the layers of learning that the pandemic has presented to us. Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, the chief scientist at WHO, said The climate crisis and the public health crisis is very linked. Whether it was the COVID-19 virus or it was the monkeypox virus that you see, they lived in a certain habitat very happily. And because of the change, they jumped over. They jumped over and made new ways of living and new spaces for interaction. So in that context, I think this Thai summit is very timely. Ranjana was telling me as I walked in, how small you feel sometime or how important you feel sometime. Both are correct in feelings. Because in this pandemic, we know if we did not do what we were supposed to do, our communities would not have been that comfortable. And if we did not encourage and acknowledge what others had to do, our living was almost impossible. One simple statistic, in addition to the 200 countries, the 500 million count, of the 1 million+ vaccinations in India, there are 2 wonderful vaccine producers from India that have to be remembered, the Serum Institute and the Bharat Biotech Company. These 2 gave us the impetus to vaccinate. But let us also not forget, in the middle of the 21st century, when we almost exaggerate private sector contribution, 95% of vaccination is from the government. So Fahad, your call to remember to work with the government resonates with me. But that doesn't mean that they could do it alone. You needed the Serum Institute. Serum Institute has put a pause to the vaccine production now because we have enough to supply. So it is in this context that I want to present just one more thought that I carry from the big picture to you. Karthik and Jui, I'd like you to respond after. The world is calling it a confluence of conflicts. A confluence of conflicts. The public health that I mentioned, there's no secret, I'm a doctor, a public health person, so I started with the health sector. But conflicts. Did we ever imagine something like Ukraine would happen? That 70% of Syria and 80% of Afghanistan, Manikina, will be below poverty line this month. It's man-made conflicts. So the call for doing one's bit, the call from Thai and its global leadership to give back is not unidirectional. It is for us to survive. The confluence of crisis in Davos was deconstructed in 4 terms. The COVID-19, the conflicts around the world. Ukraine is not the only one. There are many conflicts around the world. The third is the cost of living crisis. All of us belong to ecosystems. Food has become expensive, travel has become expensive, education has become expensive. What you could do with a 1,000 rupee note, you can no longer do. India has to think about this as well. And the final one is the food crisis. As I was listening this morning, I was recalling the conversation I had with Professor M.S. Swaminathan, ripe in his 90s now, 97. He said when he dreamt of India having 100 million ton of food for Indians, and Manikana is here, his father, but I think a leader for all of us, Mahalingamaya would often remind us, it is a generational, decadal work that let us all have enough on our plates. This confluence of crisis is unprecedented, just like the pandemic. Forums like this is for us to think, to receive, to do more of what we do, but also to readapt the way we work. And therefore, Fahad, your call of living, the way of living, is a choice. Is how we want to live today, because it's not for future generations. This is for us in our 50s and 60s and 70s, and for our children in our own families in their 20s and 30s. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome these wonderful young entrepreneurs who are before you, Jui and Karthik. Remember to keep your mind open, your heart open. You're speaking to young India. Jui, may I ask you the first question? Tell us a little bit about your space. Educate us.
Hello, am I audible? All right, hi. Thanks for that wonderful, setting the tone. Really, really great to be here, and I'm very humbled that I was invited to speak. In the midst of so many people, like-minded people, I think after COVID, it's such a refreshing change to be in a physical environment. One of the So let me introduce a little bit about the work that I do first to set the tone about why I'm speaking about this, and then I'll go, what the space looks like. So I'm from Climate Collective, and we are a non-profit working in the space of entrepreneurship support. Right, and the kind of entrepreneurship that we work with is specifically climate tech entrepreneurship. So we are supporting a number of climate tech entrepreneurs. 720 early stage entrepreneurs we've worked with over 4 years now across India, South Asia, some in Africa, etc. We really take an ecosystem approach, and I think that's the key to building up this space in a more meaningful way. We can't look at entrepreneurship in silo. You can't say that let's have more funding flowing into climate tech businesses, right? That's one thing. There'll be a couple of businesses that will scale up because of the funding opportunities. But what about a sustained ecosystem? What about having diverse entrepreneurs start thinking about entrepreneurship in the climate space, right? What about encouraging more women in universities to start thinking about entrepreneurship? So unless we are building diverse pipelines coming into the ecosystem and then supporting them through various endeavors, one being, of course, the networking opportunities that has been spoken about quite a lot by the TIE members. But it's also about plugging into the ecosystem gaps. So right now I was just having a conversation with some young entrepreneurs here who are looking at impact assessment. Because what we understand is that, one, we keep saying that a lot of funding is flowing into climate tech. All of the investors are asking, show me impact, right? Show me how much impact are you creating. But where is the knowledge to actually go and assess, quantify, and showcase impact, right? That's a missing gap. So if you don't have that, then you're unable to go and access that funding. So there are a lot of gaps, and we, as Climate Collective, we feel that we really need to plug in gaps, business gaps, ecosystem gaps, knowledge gaps, and really build a holistic ecosystem that will survive and hopefully keep growing with a lot of thousands and thousands of entrepreneurs coming and scaling up.
Wonderful. I think the ecosystem is a word that we can all look at. I am a child health practitioner in pediatrics. Ecosystem is so important. And I think we can transfer that model to many others. And we'll hold on to your thought about how does one look at the impact of the kind of work we do. Some of it we would never see in our lifetime. Some of it we are beginning to measure. But also, I think in a country where women are joining the workforce, what are the kind of supports? So Karthik, how different is your work to Jui? Tell us about your work.
Sure, thank you. And it's really great to be back in Coimbatore. I think the odd thing is this is the first time I'm traveling again in India, and the last time I traveled was in Feb of 2020 to Coimbatore. And so it's really good to see all the familiar faces, and a lot of the thoughts that we started then seem to be coming out again here, right? And I think so. Sangam, the fund, and Sangam, the incubation work that we do, a lot of it, I think everybody, I think I have this badge which says Moola guy, but I think it's not so much the capital and the investment, but the thought, right? And I see that thought in almost everybody that I meet here, and which is basically two things, right? If you do a transition for climate change, it needs to be just, it needs to be inclusive. Like, we got to bring everybody along, right? Which is around the people. Like, you can't do a transition where one person is going in like an electric car and then the other person doesn't have access to transport or to be able to get around, right? So you need to kind of figure out justness in whatever work we do. The second, and I think that seems to be the theme today, which I want to push more on, is doing whatever we do to get us to be, as a society, in more harmony with nature. Right? Like, the idea is not to, and we are a science and technology fund, right? So we half our, or more than half of our CEOs are all PhDs and masters that we have invested in. But we always want to go back and look at the science and understand what nature would have liked for us to be able to kind of do things where we go closer to nature and not get disjointed from nature, right? And so for us as a fund, those are the two key themes as investments: inclusiveness and being in harmony with nature, which I think we struggle to communicate to the rest of the climate tech VC ecosystem. Like nobody, I think, is even thinking or wanting to think about it, right? It's just too much of a issue to comprehend. The other bit, I think, which is a key theme here, and one of the key reasons I will surely be coming back to Coimbatore more often, is a lot of the work that needs to be done is at the community level, right? Building companies that can be great here, that can be replicated across, where you kind of build bridges, right? So that's the reason we are called Sangam, right? You want to bring a confluence of entrepreneurs, use networks like TIE to kind of grow entrepreneurship in a way that the Padman talked about, right? Like, can I build for everyone and make it accessible to everyone, and I don't need to become the Unilever to do that, right? And so we want to kind of figure that out, and we want to figure out a way to invest and support those entrepreneurs, and that's basically what our journey is about.
Thank you, Karthik, for saying that. Just as I move to the second round of questions to both of you, I think for all of us to remember just where we are today. I don't know if some of you had the opportunity to read and browse the newspapers the last couple of weeks. The data has come out on climate change or climate impacted refugees. And we are third or fourth on the line. And you would think in India, what are we talking about? I grew up in Nagaland. I was born in Nagaland. And the neighboring state is Assam. Wonderful rivers, majestic rivers of the Brahmaputra. And if you were looking at the news doesn't do justice always because it doesn't carry that news continuously. Millions of people in Assam have been displaced. Grains grown with hard work, blood and sweat has gone. They've lost not only their income for the year, but also they've lost, a sense of stability in the midst of an already worsening situation precipitated by poverty and this. So what you're talking, Karthik, is real life. You're not talking about tomorrow and day after. We've had almost, they say, if my memory serves right, about 4 million people who've been displaced this year. Farhad, am I right? That's the number. And this is the floods, this is the dry land, this is the lack of water supply, all of it together. So I think what you're saying, Karthik, is today in India, as we become more prosperous, we have a little bit more money to be given to people who want to try out new ideas. And we have Hema sitting here, and I always think it's in the ideas of the mind where you also have solutions for the future. Hema, what you did and what you gave to this country was two things, I think. One was you gave something that was looking at alternative energy, and let me tell you, all of Europe is talking about sources of energy. Because the Ukraine war has also looked at dependence on one particular type. All of Europe is speaking of supply chain. We took it for granted, the cheapest product, the best quality coming from somewhere. I don't know if it's right, but they told me 75% of semiconductors of America came from Taiwan. And if there was a similar situation of China, having a little hello going to Taiwan, then the US would, so we had a bipartisan delegation at Davos, a Republican and a Democratic delegation, speaking of how to reinvest in semiconductor production. So what I want to look at your presentation is also that there's a big picture. We are re-evaluating supply chains, not only on cost, but also on stability, on security, on the idea of interdependence. Resilience. And so, Jui, I come to the next point. Resilience in an industry setting, a lot of young people are here. Pradeep, thank you for bringing such wonderful young people here, because I think the ideas move through them. Resilience in the health sector, with children, we say, is a link between the innate capacity of a child. What defines the DNA of a child? Problem solving, creative thinking, innate abilities of a child and the opportunities that the world gives you. And the child then develops a coping mechanism. They know that this will not last forever, and so depression will not be their exercise, suicide will not be what they will resort to. But in your case, Jui, since you're working in the climate side, what is the inspiration? What keeps you going? I know you're still young, but still, it's hard to convince people. What keeps you going?
Right, right. And it's funny that this comes up in conversation quite often when you're working with startups and young startups. This is a question that comes up periodically, I think, when we're working in the sustainability space, that why are we even doing this, right? When you see some tech startup, education tech startup, etc., scaling up, raising big bucks, everybody says that, why are we crazy that we chose this path? Right? But I think that one is just the sheer passion. When we see the world, and resilience is the word that's, I hope it is going to catch up much more than it has. I think today also we're seeing this positive change amongst many stakeholders, that they're moving beyond just supporting renewable energy. I mean, moving beyond just solar very specifically and mobility in recent times, to talking more about adaptation and resilience. Really, I think that should be and must be one of the key focus areas. So the motivation, I think, is inspiration to work to see a more sustainable world. But I think the second motivation that I also feel is important, it's just not about morality anymore, right? It's not about doing the right thing, because I think sustainability has always been spoken in the context of doing volunteer work, tree plantation, it's been something that is always spoken about, that, you do this, but do something on the side to earn your income, This is not something that will give you money to survive, right? It's always looked at in that context till now. But what I see, which is a very refreshing change, is that understanding that sustainability can be your career. Sustainability is how you make money. 8 hours of your working day, you can give it to sustainability and still be decently fed, clothed, and I think it's a fabulous career which gives you a lot of satisfaction. And so why not choose it? Absolutely. We need a lot more people choosing that.
So I think this is across age groups. When you connect with your passion, when you connect with your knowledge domain, Mr. Muruganandam said it very well. He said you have to have core expertise. You can't wait for someone else to find why your work is important. But today, in the 21st century, as we heard from the leadership of TIE, there is an opportunity to live all of these things in a setting. So for all of us, I think it's more power to what we do. Let's not forget, and to be reminded even more deeply, to always keep looking as to why our professions matter, why our work matters, and why do we go forward. Jui, I also think what you said was very important. Solar energy or wind energy or these, what was called alternative sources of energy, are no longer looked like that. They're looked as a composite solution package that the world will have to look at. Karthik, I'm coming to you as well. It's not easy to keep it going, even if you have the vitamin M. You have to convince people. We just saw Government of India saying they'll soften the rules on environment, and softening rules might mean endangering some people. How do you keep going? What's the motivation?
Sure. I don't know if this is a motivation thing, right? Because I think if all of you close your eyes and imagine what the future looks like, right? And you can imagine, and you get a lot of movies to help you imagine that, and a lot of it seems to be skyscrapers and flying cars and all of that, and possibly, if you see recently, a lot of moving to another planet as well, right? But I think for especially myself, the team, when we talk about things, it's about if you want to close our eyes and imagine a future, we want that, right? We want that being in nature, being surrounded by green, understanding, everything. It's even your human health, because since you come from health, right? There is so much work going around today about the gut microbiome and how the environment that we live in impacts us, the nutrition part of things, right? So climate change, food security that you talked about, and nutrition have such an interesting interplay. So this work is fun. So I don't think it's a hard part, but so I don't need like that motivation to keep going on. None of the team do. It's hard for the entrepreneurs, right? But what we strongly believe in is what we are fighting for is our way of life, right? What clean technology companies touch, right, is your food, is your basic infrastructure around water, energy, services. You have a power outage today for a day, you're basically back in the Stone Ages, right? So the stuff that you're fighting for is basically what we believe will be the companies that will define our future, right? Facebook can go away, and what it might help is what you talked about in terms of youth, and basically the Padman called it foolish, you called it like just being able to be creative. Maybe they'll go away from TikTok and try something new, maybe think about sustainability, because I think we need that energy, we need that creativity where you're not stuck with the old and you want to try new things. But I am, I think, optimistic about the future. That's what makes me really kind of interested in the work that we do.
So what Mr. Muruganandam said was, to keep a foolish mind, an open mind, is what we in pediatrics and public health say, nurture a beginner's mind. That wonder that you always have when you look at something. Maria Montessori, the person who's associated with education, was in fact a physician. She was one of the first trained physicians in Italy. And she was not allowed in the dissection room, Manikina, in Rome, because she was a woman. So she went every evening to look and discover at the human body. And she slowly realized that she could move the system to learn. And so she went on to do a double major in medicine, in pediatrics, and psychiatry, and started the first clinic in Rome on developmental pediatrics. And we all know during World War II, we had Maria Montessori live in Chennai. A beautiful book has come where her letters to her grandchildren have been compiled, and her narrative of India. I say this because we see India, we see the world through multiple eyes. And we are fortunate in India. 1 billion eyes can look at the experience here. And so, to me, as we come to the end of this panel, we're in the last 2 questions now, the beginner's mind is something, when it comes to climate, a lot of us have. We may have domain expertise, but we don't have the expertise to look at the interconnectedness between one and the other. So, Jui, will you and Karthik just listen to a beginner's mind question, which is 2 areas that I would like you to highlight for us when it comes to climate and climate change, and 1 area of personal action that you can ask us as a citizen to make. We always ask the government, we will continue to do that, but as a citizen, a responsible citizen, what is it? So 2 problem areas, 1 point of action.
Right. So I think I'm going to choose there's so many in the climate tech space, honestly. This is a hard question. But one thing that I would really strongly say that in India, all of you know the one major problem is the waste problem, right? You go anywhere, you're bound to get irritated with the waste lying about. We all keep saying that we have low civic sense, there's waste lying around, the same person will go elsewhere and not throw the wrapper outside, but here we throw wrapper. I mean, I'm hearing this since I've been a child, and I feel that I'm still hearing this, so, there's not been much change. Although I have to say that there's some great initiatives, some good number of people working in this space. And when it comes to entrepreneurship and climate tech companies, I have seen the waste sector bloom like anything, right? There are companies in waste management. There are companies looking at what to do waste once it's generated, because there's so much waste that you can't stop from being generated. And you have to do something about the waste. So waste to value companies, making beautiful things out of waste and just extending the shelf life. Then there are companies working in the awareness space where they are looking to avoid waste in the first place. So alternatives to packaging, companies are doing so well in the ecosystem today. We do need to look at the price point and whether they're sustainable, etc. But it is a good start, and there are so many around. So I feel that this is the space to concentrate if you have to choose one. And it has such a great link to what you can do in terms of personal action. If every one of us only segregates at source, I think that's one thing. I love the campaign by GIZ. If you've not seen the video, go to Google and just type Alag Karo campaign. It's such a beautiful campaign, and it just looks at this one element, segregate at source, and so many of our problems, waste problems, would be solved. I think, yeah.
Waste, waste, waste. Stop using more than you need. Use responsibly, share. I think there's a lot of work on a personal level. Again, working with children, I know we have to begin with ourselves. Children don't listen to what we say. They believe in what they see in the elders around. But I think this is also a big space where a decentralized India with its governments can do a big role. Karthik, two big problems, one plan of action at citizens level.
Sure. I'm going to make them all plan of actions since we are sitting with entrepreneurs, right? The first one, in terms of problem areas, is our food, right? I think as individuals, also as entrepreneurs, I think we need to figure out getting help to our smallholder farmers, getting them to be more sustainable. But as individuals, building a better relationship with our food, right? Care about what you put in your mouth. Like, just spend time trying to understand where your food comes from, what goes into it, like who is bringing that to you. And if you do that just consciously, I think it can have a great impact. If you're an entrepreneur, think about how you can get more sustainably grown, sourced food to customers, help improve their quality of life. Right? The same thing again on the second part, especially in India, where I think there is I think 2/3 of India is still yet to be built, right? So, and we are a country that's permanently building. Take inspiration from Fahad's presentation. Think about when you're building, using things again from local sources, promote local culture, community-based building, bring in technology. I actually believe that if you can use technology to templatize and use local concepts and be able to kind of take them global, that would be great. Obviously, it's about materials and locally sourced materials versus like other aspects. But people like cooking, since we are talking about nutrition as well, like cooking, you always have substitutes, right? So you can't use olives, you use something else, right? So you can always figure out ways in which people will innovate with things. But I think if you can look at construction and food and kind of look at more sustainable, ways of doing that, I think that will have a big impact on India, also on the economy, right? In terms of point of action, what I do, I will promote, which is, try using more public transport. I know it's hard. Use more public transport, connect with more people being out there if you can. I think it's very easy when you're out globally. Some cities in India have become there, but do that, right? The more you can be in public transport, the cheaper it makes it for everybody, including the city. So be out there, spend the time, do more for the environment that way.
Karthik, I think that's such an important reminder, and I'm going to take a minute to amplify, augment, and present it to you. The relationship with our food. It's a deep relationship. Where we belong, what we value, how we want to live, all of it is there in the food. And just like the semiconductors coming out of Taiwan, we have forgotten where our food comes from. We're very preoccupied with the diversity of the menu. We have forgotten the health component. We have forgotten the relationship with, I want to remember my mother, Karthik. She was a Montessori person. She was from the Northeast. In fact, Manikana's father was the one who welcomed her when she came to Tamil Nadu. And she had something as a young mother for my brother and I. She would always say, "Hey, did you see this leaf? This is the leaf of a lady's finger. Did you see that?" And I thought to myself the joy with which she did. But later I realized what she was telling me is to be mindful of the source. And today, when the world is in the middle of a mental health crisis, not just a COVID pandemic, 1 out of 7 children in the world, please go up and read the report, it's very humbling. Our children are speaking of anxiety, of depression, of suicide as a way of approaching life. That relationship to food is not just about food security, it is about living wholesome lives. And therefore, I think just like Fahad and Mr. Muruganandam and you, Karthik, and you, Jui, I think what we are saying is a startup is present everywhere. The idea is a response to the problem. Fortunately, the world has more resources than it has ever done before, but it has more people than we ever have had on this planet. We're close to 8 billion. 2 billion of them are children, and the 2 billion are experiencing mental health crisis. All that we are talking about today has to be on our balance sheet. There are 2 things I want to mention, and I want to thank Karthik and Jui for highlighting this. This is about life. We know far too people who do the sprint and cannot do the marathon. We can't afford them. They are the wonders who come with evaluation and the wonders who disappear because the life that they wanted actually consumes them. So we need a balance. Just like you, I think, I come from a family deeply inspired by Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhiji was never against technology. He was for dialogue. Even before looking at technology, he said, open mind, think together. Find what is best for people. Don't think about what you want to do. So the final thing to both of you, and as you say, I'm reminded of Professor Amartya Sen. And apparently when Professor Amartya Sen got his Nobel Prize for Economics, the Nobel Committee asked the laureates to give 2 things for the exhibition. And do you know what Professor Amartya Sen gave? He gave the book Aryabhatta because he learned Sanskrit from his grandfather and understood mathematics. And he thought that love for mathematics got him to economics. But he gave his little bicycle that his grandfather gave. He had weighed 35,000 children. For all of you there, the bicycle is not just a green solution. It's a tool. He went to weigh 35,000 children and plotted their growth charts to bring that magical piece that won him the Nobel Prize. That is to say, famines are man-made. And he gave the bicycle to the Nobel Museum because he said, all this work is hard work. It's hours of labor, hours of love for the people in whose life you want to make a difference. So your closing thought, Jui? As a young woman, when many, many young women in this audience want to know, do we have equal partnership in this world? What would your word be?
I wish, and I hope for the day when we have equal partnership, but we don't. The numbers speak for themselves, sadly. You know, when we're just looking up how many women in climate, right? Because we keep hearing this, that women have traditionally been more, in sync with using natural resources. Women are the ones that go and get water. They have had relationship with forests, and it is the women who are more in sync with nature than men. Right? That's always been the discourse around climate. When climate crisis hits, as it is already hitting, and when it gets worse, women are the ones who are going to be disproportionately affected by climate. And so it just makes sense that when we're talking about a transition to sustainability, a transition to fighting climate change through businesses, women need to be equal partners in that because they get insights from being so close to nature, right? We need diverse perspectives, and it's not just give them a chance, It's not an ethical thing. You are not going to reach that transition if you don't get diverse perspectives. So we definitely need more women taking charge and being leaders in
So
this
all
space.
leaders sitting here, remember to have a woman on the right, left, and center everywhere around you. Don't forget, be the voice and bring back the voice. Karthik, Young India, 1 in 4 young people around the world, it looks like you and me, young Indians. What's your message? How can young people be equal partners?
I think so. Again, right, coming back to you know what Arun talked about in Thai and the community, what I really believe in with what Sangam stands for, right, is about building stronger local communities, and then having these communities then build networks across each other, right? Because I think so. The late C.K. Prahlad made this statement, and this last book that he did around sustainability and innovation, he talked about N equals to 1, R equals to G, right? N equals to 1 is when you're working with like a particular customer, that one customer needs to be your focus, right? Just be very focused on that, serving that one customer that you're working with, but your resources are global, right? I think there is some Tamil like Saha Kudumbam, right?
Yeah.
About the global village. And I think sitting in this forum, I think the opportunity to see and understand how strong communities are built and how strong linkages are built across global communities. I think the important message is that no entrepreneur is alone, right? Reach out and you shall be helped. The universe is conspiring to make you successful, right? And that's basically, and I said I'm an eternal optimist. So do basically kind of believe in yourself and believe in your mission and believe that everybody around you is out to help.
So I think it's bi-directional call here. For everybody who is young, considers themselves young, reach out. And everybody who has knowledge and experience in leadership, the Thai call to you, and Karthik has just augmented it, reach out. Reaching out is not looking upwards. Reaching out is, on a certain trend. I'm delighted to be here. I am no entrepreneur. I know very little, and I know only child health. And the world has been such a wonderful canvas. I am a very proud member of a local community. This city of mine is so wonderful. Is so connected. You see the quality of leadership of Coimbatore here. But during the pandemic, I have thought of the frontline workers, people who've been on the front line, with a lot of respect. A lot of respect, because they define the delivery of our services. They define the quality of the services. I want to acknowledge two from my team who came here. Devika, would you please stand up? A young engineer who managed the Children's Academy, 40,000 children. And Tamilvani from our early childhood program, who is here. Please give them a big round of applause. Thank you, Devika and Tamilvani. My respect for frontline workers has been important because they bring the community linkage, and my respect for interconnectedness has gone up. It's not one without the other. We are not saying local versus global. We're not saying knowledge versus practice. That's not the 21st century idiom. The idiom is together. And I think at Thai, the reason I accepted the invitation from Ranjana and Mohana and all of you at Thai is because I felt this was a platform as we build back in the midst of a pandemic. For me, I could also place the thought of children here, that your investment plan must have children, that your investment plan must have active collaboration with everything that can make the life better for a child, because what is good for a child is good for the world. Good climate, good food, good life, good learning. And therefore, I think it will not be out of place to remember Mahatma Gandhi, who said, a small body of determined spirits can indeed alter the course of history. This is that moment in history, a 1 in 100-year situation, where there is a confluence of crisis. Every sector has to look inward, and every sector has to collaborate with the other sector if the world must build back better, or at least come out healthy from this pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, please give these wonderful young leaders of India a round of applause. Thank you, Jui. Thank you, Karthik.
Thank you so much, Jui, Karthik, and Vinu. And Vinu, we are proud of you as citizens of Coimbatore. We feel privileged that we are in the same city as you. Go to the internet and search for Kezevino Aram, and then you will know that you will have to go behind her taking autographs. Thank you so much, Vinu. And since you picked on the point of diversity, there are 50% of our speakers are women as well, Vinu. So, on the other end, the youngest attendee today is 9 years old, and the oldest is 85 years old. So we have a great balance of age as well. Jui, the Alag Karo video for you. Yeah.